Well, hi. Welcome
Hello.
to the first ever episode of GM Chat here on Artifacts Worldwide. Um, I'm Jeff Smith. I am the DM for Lands of Aecathan. I also play on board remotely and on GameStream.
And I am Michael Christian, and I do the same thing, but I play instead of game master at Lands of Aecathan.
Yep. Now, we decided we'd do this show because we've been game mastering a while. When did you start, Mike? When did you first run?
My first GM experience, probably, I want to say 84. Yeah, something like that, 1984. And I believe it was Villains and Vigilantes was the
Oh,
game that I ran.
nice. Yeah, you're good at that. You're my favorite V&V GM.
Well,
Um,
that's good to know.
yeah, I I probably started right around the same time. Actually, I got into D&D in junior high school, but I
Mm.
didn't actually run anything until probably around the mid '80s.
Yeah, and I started in high school, Dungeons and Dragons. It was my senior year. Yeah. And one of my best friends in high school knew a guy who started playing, and we actually got started. This was back before the satanic panic
Yeah,
blew up. But the librarian in the high school would let us go and play in the library during our lunch.
hmm.
And her rationale was, hey, it gets kids reading. So she thought
True.
it was a great idea. And it really was. And we had a blast. It was me and my buddy and two other people, and the one guy ran. And we had a blast with it. And I was hooked ever since.
Yep. Mine. I know you know this story, but I got started in a really weird way. Um, I actually got started in D&D because I won one of the original box sets from a radio call-in contest. I was an avid radio listener. I've been a radio fan my whole life, and I was listening to WAAM 1600 AM in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which is what the AAM stands for. Um, and they had this contest where if you were caller number whatever, you got a chance to find the dragon, which I later learned was basically just a loop on a cart that they would push the button 3 times, and if one of the sounds that played was the dragon roar, you won. And one of the sounds that played was the dragon roar. And I won it from our local hobby shop, which was Riders.
Right. Yep.
Um, and I went and got it and brought it home and started reading it. And I remember I spent that entire summer camped out in my backyard with a notebook and the dice and some pencils and that rule book, and I just made characters all summer.
Wow.
So, um,
Yeah. I actually got my first box set Christmas of that year, of my high school year. And it wasn't the basic rules; it was the expert rules.
oh, okay.
Um, but which that is the book that's framed back there. But yeah, it's funny. It was because Wham was like virtually across the street from you where you lived at the time, right?
Yeah, it was just down the road.
Yeah. So, um, but yeah, that was a long time ago, and a lot of dice rolls since.
Oh yeah, yep. And we both ended up marrying people who turn out to be dice fanatics. So,
Yes, yes, yes.
At least mine only likes them if they're purple. So that's sort of self-limiting.
True. Mine, I think, has begun to realize it was becoming a problem.
Okay.
And has slowed down. Not stopped or given it up, but has slowed down.
Yeah. I ended up having to do that too when I bought my latest dice case and people started looking at it going, "Oh my God, you mean that's full?" I thought,
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I have enough. And then, like the latest one was got involved with Good Old Dice on Twitter and ended up backing their Kickstarter and, looking at their current catalog and going, "Oh, I need that and those and these and that one and this one, and oh, my wife will want these 3." So it's not cured by any stretch of the imagination, but I too have slowed down. I mean, there was one summer I ordered, I think, 15 sets from Chessex. So
Jeez.
I'm much better now.
I'm a lot more choosy about what I get for dice. They usually will have a specific purpose, or I'll have a set that really catches my eye, and I'm like, okay, that one I want. But I'm not, if it has sparkles in it and is a pastel color, I don't like, "Oh, I've got to have it. It's beautiful." Like some.
Yeah.
But, like the set that I'm using for Airmen is Die Hard dice metal set, and it's the Mythica Dark Iron, and just gorgeous dice. Love those dice.
Yeah,
Love
sounds
them.
it. Yeah, our friend Nikki, who plays your sister Zorith on Aecathan, has just got a set of Labradorite dice. And I remember she's got a huge slab of Labradorite, and she showed it to me, and it's beautiful. But I didn't realize you could make dice out of it, and the dice are really pretty too.
Definitely her.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. All right, so what we're going to do with this show is there are lots of videos out there, lots of shows that'll tell you how to GM. We're not going to do that.
No.
What we're going to do is, we're going to take our many, many years of experience, and we're going to have a topic every week that we're going to talk about and say, okay, so how do you deal with this? What are some ways that you can handle certain issues that come up during various games? And Mike, you want to tell them what our first topic is?
Yeah, sure. First topic is there really such a thing as OP in tabletop RPGs, or overpowered? Player characters specifically.
Right. Because it's easy for a GM to be overpowered.
Oh yeah, sure.
We both have had that experience of having a GM who they're running the game because they enjoy humiliating and torturing characters.
Well, GMs are inherently overpowered. It's just what we do. We're the ones that have to hold back on the reins, though.
Right.
And that requires some judgment and sense of fair play,
and the occasional fudging of dice
having
rolls.
The right priorities, I think, too. I think having the right priorities as a game master. If your priority is to go in there and own your players, well, you're going to do it because you can.
Right.
But
they're probably not going to have any fun.
Right. You're playing 4th level characters. All right, well, I'm going to throw this ancient red dragon on you and just show you how pathetic you really are. Well, of course, they're going to get destroyed. So Dungeon Master can do, they are overpowered. They are the ultimate power.
Yep.
But that's not their job to dominate players. That's not what in my opinion, it's not the DM's role. But can player characters be overpowered? My opinion is no. The popular opinion is yes. I've heard on several DM YouTubes that, when you get into overpowered characters, then you run into time-consuming battles, and it can, just turn into a long, drawn-out combat situation, and you're not really doing anything else but trying to resolve combat. Well,
first off, I don't understand what the problem with that is. If you've gotten to the point where you have an epic conflict coming,
that's going to take
some time.
Yeah, and it should. It shouldn't just be, oh, I got him a lucky shot and killed him.
Right. That can happen. And, I don't know about you, but I've certainly had situations where I've had an epic conflict planned, and a round later it's over because the players were more resourceful than I expected them to be.
Really?
Yeah.
You don't know if I have or not?
That's
Terminator
true.
Game?
That's true. Yeah, I kind of spoiled that one.
It was fun, though. But I don't think so. Here, my philosophy with game mastering is you're there to facilitate fun for the players. So if your players, for example, I run Villains and Vigilantes. Well, as Jeff knows, I don't run the textbook version of Villains and Vigilantes. I use a heavily modified version of Villains and Vigilantes. Mm-hmm. Because frankly, the original V&V, while it had good bones, just wasn't very authentic, nor was it very accurate. I think it said a nuclear explosion causes 4d100 points of damage, meaning that there's a possibility that you could do 4 points of damage with a nuclear explosion. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
it doesn't make sense.
That's not very realistic.
Using these revised rules, you can play virtually any kind of superhero you want to play. And I would tell my players, you play whatever you want. And their first inclination is to maybe make like a Superman character. Well, how do you do a storyline for a Superman character? And I heard on one of those YouTube GMs mention Superman as an example of why not to have overpowered characters. He said, if you're a writer, paraphrasing here, he says, if you're a writer, who would you rather write a comic book for, Batman or Superman, in a long-term series? Mm-hmm. And he says, obviously, Batman is a better choice because Superman, it's hard to write for characters that powerful. Well, I kind of beg to differ. And in my game, if you want to play a character who's like Superman, who's nigh indestructible, has vast superhuman strength, speed, senses, all of these things, well, all that means is me, as the game master, get to do the same thing. And I don't have a problem with that. And I make sure the characters know, just you can play whatever you want, but understand, so can I. As long as you know that that's an even, thing. So yeah, you can play these cosmic level characters, Thanos or Silver Surfer or whatever, fine. But then it's going to be a cosmic level adventure. And the things you're going to fight are going to be able to destroy planets. So that's up to you. And, there's some inherent difficulties that players have found playing Superman-like characters. And this this kind of harkens back to some criticism about Zack Snyder's Superman movie, The Man of Steel. You got to deal with collateral damage.
Yeah.
When you're playing a character that powerful, fighting another character that powerful, you have to be careful what you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, look at what the Avengers did to New York.
Right. Well, they didn't do anything to New York, but
Well,
they had to do what they had to do, and they
right.
tried to keep it as confined as they could.
But in the
Um,
process,
but
they
in the process, I mean,
that conflict broke a lot of stuff.
yeah. Um, but it happens. If that's the level you want to play at, then you have to be able to deal with the situations. So I think as a game master, coming up with storylines for that stuff is simple enough. You just have to have the imagination to do it.
Yeah.
In Dungeons and Dragons, characters are going to get to be 19th and 20th level, and they're fighting things that are beyond the planet they're on.
Yep.
They're fighting things that are threatening the planet they're on. And it's no different, in my opinion. You just come up with cosmic level beings, or in D&D case, extraplanar beings that can threaten it, and they've got to stop it.
Yeah.
So it just doesn't wash with me. I think you should be able to run any kind of game that the players are willing to play in. Now there are some players who are like, I don't want to play in a game where I want to be able to have something more, grounded, something more literally on the ground. I want to be just the fighter guy, or I want to play a Batman character or something. That's great too. We can do that too.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that it's difficult, or there are any difficulties running a campaign for any level type of or power type of player. It just takes creativity, which is what this is all about.
Yeah. When you mentioned the Superman character and how you handled it, my first thought was, I go a completely different direction. I don't give them something equally as powerful, or maybe slightly more powerful in the same way. I will put something in front of them that most of their powers can't affect, or they have to think outside the box in order to figure out how to affect it. Like for a Superman character, my first thought was an incorporeal psychic-based character.
Right.
Everything
Well,
they
and
throw goes right through them, and it's attacking their mind, which they don't have any protection.
Well, and they've done that in the comic books with Superman too, where they put him against magic-based creatures, and Superman has no defense against magic.
Yep.
So exactly. The thing you got to be careful of with that, though, is if a player puts his character together with the idea of getting to use his powers, you have to be careful when you negate those abilities, because then it starts not being fun anymore. Because it's like, why did I bother taking these abilities if I'm not going to be able to use these abilities?
Right.
So you have to be cautious about that. There has to be something they can do with the powers they have to handle it. And the other thing is, you have a character who's like Thor or something like that, who's very physical based, super strength and all of that sort of thing. And this works for the Superman. It's exactly what they did for the Superman character in DC Comics, is you put them up against someone who's far more intelligent than they are. Lex Luthor is the ultimate adversary for Superman, and he doesn't have one superpower.
No.
He's just extremely intelligent. And that's another way to around it.
Yep.
You throw them up against you know, if it's a physical based character, you put them in a situation that requires them to think and to try to outwit and second guess, you know.
Yeah,
So I mean, there's
my second thought was to give them something like the Flash, something that is nowhere near as strong, but is just slightly faster. And so they
right.
have to figure out, okay, how do I use what I've got to create a situation in which his speed or her speed is not going to be as great an asset, and I'm actually going to be able to do something.
Right.
So it's putting them in a situation where not necessarily the direct application of their powers, but maybe the indirect application of their powers is what ends up,
Yeah.
you know, turning the tide. It makes them have to think a little bit more about, okay, I could punch or I could, you know, heat ray, but I can't hit this thing doing just that. So now what do I do? I got to figure out another way to use these abilities.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, and that's exactly why we play the game, because now the players have these great powers, but now they have to find new ways to use them.
Right.
And that's fun for them, and it gives them some things about their character that they didn't realize that maybe they could do. You know, did you ever see that movie Sky High?
Yep.
Okay, there's a good example of that. So there's a scene in the movie where one of the characters who can use fire is going up against another character who's a speedster. So the character who is a speedster starts running in circles around the guy with the fire, creating a vortex effect and pulling the oxygen from around him. He can no longer use fire.
Right.
That's what you're talking about, and that's like brilliant. That's what I'm talking. You know, that's awesome. A player comes up with something like that in my games is handsomely rewarded, I can assure you. Yeah, that's great stuff. Great stuff.
Yep. And I will admit, as a DM, I have found it more difficult when I'm dealing with epic levels
Of course.
come up with stuff.
Sure. You know, because they're more powerful. And I think that's what the problem is that they were saying with OP characters is epic levels is you're talking about God level characters. You know, these characters are just short of being deities in this world.
Yeah, they're demigods, yeah.
Right. And so it can be challenging, but it's not impossible. And you got to be able to think a little bit to come up with it. And just as we were talking about there, coming up with a circumstance where all of their might and prowess and magic can't be used in a straightforward way. They've got to think about another way to use it, you know? So...
Yep. Raven in the Rockies says, with imagination, even Batman can move mountains.
Sure he can. Sure he can. If nothing else, Batman can suggest to Superman, hey, look, we need to get this mountain out of the way. Why don't you attack it from this angle, and I can get my jet, and we can attack it from, and I can get another, and you can work together with them and do something like that. That's absolutely true. There are ways around it. There are ways to do things.
Yeah.
Always.
And
you know?
One of the topics that's come up as we've talked a little bit about this beforehand is this this concept of min-maxing.
Yes.
And I found a really good definition of min-maxing that I want to read you.
Okay.
Min-maxing is the character building strategy of maximizing a specific desirable ability, skill, or other power of a character and minimizing everything else.
I see. Okay.
So you're basically talking about, a fighter who puts everything they have into specializing with a single weapon and a single fighting style.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it. Another, to me, is more elementary, is a fighter dumps everything he has into his physical strength.
Yep.
So he can do as much damage as he can possibly do with a blow. And every other stat is a dump stat. You know, none of the other stats are important. He just focuses on that to try to maximize. Yeah, I get it.
Yep. And you know, looking at it from that point of view, that's almost easier to deal with as a GM.
It is. You know, the other thing though with that, I know it's kind of a faux pas or considered bad form to do that kind of play that way. I don't have a problem with it as a game master. If that is how you're going to have fun in my game and it's not going to really disrupt my game, I don't care. You play how you want. Now, you know, in recent years, in the last 10, 15 years, I've gotten more into the role play and storytelling. And characters or players who are into that mid-maxing and stuff, they're not really going to enjoy themselves that much in the storytelling thing. So the problem kind of resolves itself.
Yeah.
You know, but I mean, there's something to be said for that too. If you come up with a great character idea of a character who, say, is a wizard, and the player says, I'm going to dump all of my stuff into intelligence. You know, he's a weak guy. He's been weak his entire life. He doesn't have a lot of high physical attributes. And he's dedicated his entire life, every bit of his life, into studying and getting more intelligent and smarter. Everything else is irrelevant to him. So he just focused. Okay, well, now you've made a story based around that idea. There's nothing wrong with that. That's perfectly legitimate and viable.
And there's a great example of that, Raceland, in the Dragonlance books. That's exactly, I mean, he is very weak. His brother is sort of his opposite. His brother is not terribly intelligent, but very strong, very durable, and very devoted to taking care of him. He traded physical health for increased magical ability. So he made the choice to become even weaker, to become even stronger in magic. And that character ends up being, you know, an archmage.
Sure.
In that world. And, you know, they wrote that character really, really well because they explained it. Why that character chose the things that he did.
And that's my point is, you know, even if you're doing a storytelling based RPG, there are still characters who will work in that environment, because that's clearly not only a great story, a classic story, and a main character, and it worked, and that's just proves my point. You know what I mean?
Now, one of the things that I've always had trouble with, and I'm interested to hear your take on this, is you have a character, say, you know, we'll go back to villains and vigilantes. You have a character who's decided to make a Superman level character in a group where no one else has that level of power. How do you deal with trying to balance out a combat scenario for that? Because it's either going to be really, really easy for the Superman style character or next to impossible for everybody else.
Right.
Unless you're really clever about it.
Yeah. So how I handle something like that, because as you know, I have had that sort of thing.
Yeah.
before, and how I handle it
CJ.
is pretty much how the Justice League deals with it, where you have Superman, and then you have Batman and Robin and that sort of thing. Those levels. Well, you don't throw just one villain at them, and you don't have just one motivation to take the villain down. Your big bad is who Superman is going to fight, and typically it'll take place in the sky. If not, it'll be separated from the rest of the group at some point. So it's fairly easy to get those two, duking it out. And then you give something else for the rest of the team to do. If it's more villains on their level, if it's bombs in the building that need to be disarmed, if it's, it just, there are other things that you can do besides flail on the big bad guy who you're not going to scratch. You leave that to the big good guy. But as a GM, you have to give everyone something to do. You have to give them all a task that they're capable of doing. And if there's a character who's intelligent, who's a tech geek or something like that, then you give him a problem to solve. He has to work on stopping the computer virus before it's uploads into the satellites and is distributed around the world. So, I mean, there are things you can do for everybody to play to their strengths so that they feel like they're a part of resolving the global catastrophe. So, I mean, that's how I resolve it. That's how I handle that situation.
And here's our network drop. We didn't have at least one. All right.
There we go.
There we go.
Got you back.
Yeah, if we didn't have at least one network hiccup during a show, I don't think I'd know what to do.
Yeah, I know. It'd be crazy. Nuts. I don't know how much of that got cut off, but
I got most of it.
okay. So yeah, the basis, the gist of it was that you give something for everyone. You give some part of the story, some part of the resolution, to play to the strength of every character.
Right.
It freaking did it again. Just in case, I'm gonna
there we go.
there.
All right. Yes, we appear to be having some more technical difficulties because, that happens.
That's how we roll.
Right.
Okay.
Once again,
hot spotted to my tablet now. Maybe it'll.
All right.
Now, my internet connection is unstable, even with the tablet. So I don't know. We'll do the best we can.
Yep. Well,
we'll do the best that our providers will allow. How's
there you
that?
go. There you go. Yep.
I swear, since this internet thing, it seems like the big company, the internet providers are choking data.
I'm sure that they are, because there's so much more demand on the system, because there's so many people home and so many people now relying on their home internet connections to work or to go to school or to check in with family or whatever.
Gee, yeah, nothing important. Why would they want to slow that down? I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, It's a matter of, as I understand it, the infrastructure of the internet was not capable of handling the demand that was placed on it by the pandemic. So to try and make it at least semi-functional for everybody, they lowered speeds.
Well, I can even deal with that if they would just lower it a little bit for everyone and not like strangle it completely and then let up off of it after 10 or 15 minutes. You know, getting disconnected is more frustrating.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's how I would resolve that issue with, you know, spreading the love, as it were.
Yeah. The only problem I have with that is that you then end up, you end up violating rule number 1. You end up splitting the party.
That's true, but they don't have to split up. They can all jump on the big bad guy if they want.
Right.
I mean, it's up to you.
Yeah.
As a player, you know, you can go over here and you can work on the computer, or you can go over here and fight your way up through the building to get to the bombs against the underlings and minions and the hired help, or you can all just go pile on, you know, Black Adam over here and get annihilated. That's entirely up to you.
Right.
So,
well, it's like, you know, imagining Black Widow trying to go up against Thanos.
yes.
There's nothing she can do.
Not really.
Except entertain him. That's pretty much it. You know.
No, that's exactly right. But let's take that example. In Endgame, she still had a part to play, and she still was one of the most directly responsible characters for stopping him.
Yeah.
You know, so there you go. That's my point right there. That's how you have to handle it. That's how you have to run a game like that. You give them something to do, something meaningful.
Now, let's take another example. Let's flip the story here for a second. How do you cope with, because I don't know if you've dealt with this, but I've had to deal with this a couple times. Somebody makes a character that is almost deliberately useless. How do you deal with a character like that?
If it were me, I don't know that I've ever had that happen before, but if it were me, clearly the person is opting for a story-driven campaign. Because
Right.
you don't make a useless character with the intent of, I'm going to go in and be a murder hobo. Because, you know,
Right.
no, you're going to go in and commit suicide, you know. So that's clearly what they're trying to do. They're trying to make a character who's outside the box, a little, you know, deviant from the norm, but still interesting. And you facilitate that, I think. You make them part of the story. And there are tons of stories out there where, you know, the plucky sidekick goes along through the entire adventure with the hero, but they find some meaningful way to contribute, other than, you know, strength of arms.
Yeah.
So I think there's ways of dealing with it. You just have to be a little more resourceful in how you think about it. And, you know, while they may be inept as far as combat skills, they may be good at other things. You know, maybe they're good at sneaking around, or maybe they're good at BSing their way into a situation or out of a situation. If nothing else, while the hero is doing battle, they can run over and pull the switch to do whatever. I mean, you know, there are ways around it. And when it's a story-driven campaign, they can be extremely, not only extremely fun, but important to the story arc. So I wouldn't, if someone wanted to do something like that, you could pull it off. It could be done, and probably could be done with a lot of cool stuff too. But it will be challenging for that person because they will be in constant danger. And that's something you would have to talk to the player about. It's like, this is great. This is what you want to do, just so you know. It's a good possibility that you could lose the character at some point. Because they're not very tough. They don't fight well. While they do keep themselves out of harm's way, they're not going to always be out of harm's way. So as long as you go into this with that understanding that it's possible, that's fine. But you do that at session 0 and just give them that little warning, so that they understand that possibility is real. I'm not going to protect them, but I'm not going to gun for them either,
Have you ever had a situation where you've had to say, you've had to ride herd and just say no to a character concept?
The only time that I can think of I've ever done stuff like that is if it was something that was completely inappropriate for the genre we're playing. For example, this hasn't happened, but this is an example. If somebody comes to me and says, oh man, I would really like to have this character come from another planet who has these powerful this powerful belt that allows them to travel through planes and stuff. Other than that, he's just like a regular fighter, and I'd like to bring him into the D&D game. No, I wouldn't allow something like that, because you play Dungeons and Dragons for one reason: to play a high fantasy or low fantasy campaign, and something like that is a little too far out. If you're playing Planescape, that's one thing, or Rifts, that's one thing. But if it's a D&D game, if it's a genre-specific game like that, then I usually will kibosh that. What about you?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I've had, a couple times that people wanted to make characters specifically to cause conflict in the group. Like, that was their goal.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I would not recommend it, because in that particular game, it was like, I wouldn't recommend it because I can say by the end of the second game session, somebody's going to shank you.
Right. That brings up another thing. I will probably always turn down anyone who wants to play an evil character. I've never personally ran an evil campaign before that I can recall. But it goes either way. If I am running an evil campaign, I'm not going to let anyone play a good character. Because it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Right.
But even more to the point, a character that's disruptive, like somebody they're chaotic neutral, let's say, and most of the party is good, and most of the party is trying to do good. Well, a chaotic neutral character isn't in it for the good. They're in it for either A, the fun, or B, the money, or C, both.
Right.
Whatever's going to give them the gratification, that's why they're in it. It can be done, it can be played, but they're typically not going to do things for the right reason, and that can cause more than just a storyline conflict with the other players. And it has to be handled correctly. I wouldn't leave it to just anyone to do. Well, I'm just a nasty guy. That's what my character would do. Well, if that's what your character would do, then your character and you need to cope with the consequences of that action.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm in a campaign at the moment where my character is a neutral good ranger, but his best friend in the group is a chaotic neutral barbarian.
mm-hmm.
And they've pretty much bonded over the fact that when it comes time to lay the smackdown, they both revel in it.
Right.
And
and
they've learned to fight together. They've learned to trust each other, and the chaotic neutral character has kind of learned that, you know, if the ranger says, wait a minute, he won't immediately go charging in. He'll actually pause for a second and listen to what the ranger has to say. Then he might still go running in. You know,
yeah.
but at least he's gotten to the point where he'll consider another suggestion.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. It's when you have interactions. You know, if you have a paladin who's lawful good, or any good alignment for that matter, paladins tend to be very proactive about their ethics and or morals.
Right.
And they typically don't have any concern about how that affects anyone else around them as far as, you know, evil or neutral characters.
Well,
you know what I mean?
For some paladins, yes.
Well,
if you're gonna play sort of the stereotypical, you know, I'm lawful good tunnel vision lady, and I'm just gonna, you know, if I think it's evil, I'm going after it.
Well, I'm not saying there's no latitude there. What I'm saying is there are certain things, like the chaotic neutral character says, I'm just rushing in there and I'm going to slaughter them. And the paladin is like, well, hold on, wait a minute. They're not doing anything. They're not hurting anyone. We're just supposed to go in there and talk to them. And he's like, well, no, they're wearing all kinds of jewels and stuff. I want that. And rushes in and attacks. The paladin, what is his logical response? He's going to stop him.
Yeah, or try to, yeah.
By any means necessary. Well, here's your problem. If that's a company, a player character going up against another player character, now you've got conflict. Now it becomes a personal thing. And it's just a recipe for disaster. To your table, not the game, to the table.
Right.
And so that would be some restrictions I also play on it. Good characters and evil characters don't mix.
I've only run one evil campaign in my life. It didn't go long because I couldn't quite figure out how to work with a party of people who none of them trust each other.
Mm-hmm.
I ran a Drow campaign, and it went several sessions, but you know, it just kind of petered out because people were like, you know, okay, this isn't as much fun as I thought it was going to be. I'm tired of not being able to trust the people that I'm working with. I'm tired of having to feel like I have to watch my back 24/7.
That brings me to probably our final point. We're closing in here. To that end, and then we've kind of gotten off the mark here a little bit, but
no, yeah, that's going to happen.
When you're doing a story-driven campaign, you know, if you're all a bunch of murder hobos, nobody cares what alignment you are.
Right.
You're all there for one reason, you know.
Yep.
But if you're doing a story-driven campaign and you have story arcs, it's okay to play the lone wolf, the guy who broods in the corner, you know, sits with his back to the wall and looks at the door so that nobody can sneak up on him because he's, you know, such a bad dude, you know.
Sure.
those characters are fine, and there's room for them in any story arc. They're a little cliche, but it's fine. But the thing is as a player, you've got to realize in a long-term campaign that's story-driven, you're not playing a lone wolf. You're not playing the character who is antisocial. You're playing a character who starts that way, but grows to like and actually be around the rest of the party. So you have to develop that, and it comes over time, but you have to develop that where you have this camaraderie and you do trust your party, and you would do anything for them. You would risk your own life to save them. So you have to get to that point, but that's the ultimate goal of the character.
Right.
Even though when you start the game, he's a butthead, you know, and that's the only way you can make those kind of characters work. If you go through the whole campaign where he just wanders off to do whatever he wants, I can tell you right now as a game master, that's not going to work. I will kill your character because I'm not running two separate campaigns at the same time.
Right.
You know, so yeah.
Yeah. No, I get it. The ranger that I'm playing in the other campaign is he's half Drow. So he started the game basically based on life experience, not trusting anyone because anyone he's ever trusted has eventually turned on him because of his heritage. That was not his fault. And so at the beginning of the campaign, he was an absolute ass because his way of dealing with expecting betrayal was just to be pissy and sort of wear that expectation on the outside. And, you know, he's mellowed quite a bit.
Sure.
I think he's 13th level now. And, you know, he's actually gotten to the point where he's figured out what his role in the group is, and he trusts the other people in the group, and he's forged the friendship with the barbarian. And
Right.
yeah.
You know, and that's at 13th level, yeah, you should be at that point with the group. In my opinion, you should start coalescing with the group by level 6 or 7. You know, by the time you hit second tier, you should have some idea of what you want to do or where you're supposed to play your role within the group.
Yeah, he took a little longer.
Still have them.
He took a little longer, and the group basically had to sit him down and have a come to Jesus talk and basically say, you want to keep traveling with us, this shit has got to stop.
Right.
And that was what he needed.
You know, and that's great storytelling, though. I mean, that's what you do.
Yeah.
But you know, and that going back, bringing it full circle, when you have players who got to deal with that too, where you're playing Superman and everyone else is playing, you know, Batman.
Mm-hmm.
You got to contend with that.
Or a Green Arrow.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, you got to contend with that because you're the one who has the biggest responsibility to stop the bad guy. You know, and if you invariably make a mistake, you're the one that everyone's going to blame. So playing those characters is fun. It's a blast, but it comes with its own set of challenges, you know.
Yeah. My wife is fond of telling the story. One of our V&V groups, our Superman type character was in a fight and got blasted with, I don't know, either fire or power blast or something, but it shredded his costume off his body. And so there he is, you know, the epitome of truth, justice, and the American way, floating naked in the sky. And he chose to leave and go get another costume, which got my wife's character killed.
Right.
And she never lets him forget that. To this day.
another good incident with that character and this is one that he absolutely loves telling, and I love it. It's one of my favorite anecdotes. Is he's fighting the big bad guy who is every bit his equal, and they're in orbit, and he gets punched by the bad guy so hard that he can't control his velocity and is flying straight towards the Earth. Well, one of the other characters with a dimensional portal, to avoid hitting the Earth, opens it up behind him blindly to wherever, and he goes through it and disappears. Well, what ended up happening was that it was a time portal, and it sent him back 65 million years, where he struck the Yucatan Peninsula and wiped out all of the dinosaurs. He was responsible for it.
Uh-huh.
And that it was just too good. I had to do that, and he has a ball with that story. So, but you know, that's the kind of stuff you can come up with, and that's why I don't have any problem whatsoever. That would have never happened if we had played. Well, this guy with super strength can only lift 1,000 pounds.
Yep.
That doesn't, you know, that would never happen. We would never have that story. So that's why I say it let them play and just run with it and see what happens. You know, it keeps you on your toes as a game master, but you can come up with a lot of fun moments with it.
Yeah. And to sort of sum up, I would definitely have to agree. I mean, to answer the question you asked that started all of this, no, I don't think there is such a thing as an overpowered character. Because as a game master, you have all of the resources in the world that exists, and you can make new stuff. The Aecathan campaign, I mean, we haven't gotten to the point where they've really been revealed yet, but I've got an entire race that is unique to the world, that has unique abilities pretty much in any D&D supplement I've ever read.
Right.
So,
and that's the fun of doing your own world too. But
yeah, and you know, this is going to be a whole new challenge.
Sure.
That, you know, there's going to be some interesting times. But, you know, there's nothing you can't think your way around. I'll just say that.
Right. And even things that you can do, your abilities, your skills, there are ways of utilizing them in maybe a new way that work, you know. So, you know, I would encourage game masters, you know, you run whatever campaign you want.
Sure.
And please surround yourself with like-minded players, and you'll have a lot of fun. All of you will. But let your players do whatever they want to do. That's where they'll have the most fun. Don't like sort of restrict what they're capable of or what they can aspire to be. You know, I mean, if you're running that kind of campaign and they understand that, then so be it. But it's just not in my wheelhouse. If you want to play a Jedi Knight, go ahead. If you want to play Superman, go ahead. If you want to play Thanos, well, you're going to die, but go ahead. You know. Right.
Yeah. I mean, my imagination spins too quickly for me to ever feel like I can't deal with something. It might take me a day or two, but eventually, if my conscious doesn't come up with it, my subconscious will come up with it. I'll wake up in the morning and go, oh, that's how to fix it. That's happened to me more than once.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, write that stuff down. You never know.
Oh yeah. I had a thought hit me as we were playing last night that I jotted down in my notes. That's going to be a whole new storyline that I hadn't even thought of.
There you go.
So.
There you go.
Yep.
And that's why we keep coming back as game masters, because, you know, oh, I just thought of this. Hey, I can do it.
Exactly.
Why? Because I'm the GM.
Yep. That's exactly right. Okay. Well, that's going to do it for this first episode of GM Chat. Please, if you have subjects that you'd be interested in hearing us talk about, let us know.
Yep.
You can go to artifactsworldwide.com. You access all of our social media from there, access our Discord server from there. Let us know. If there's something that strikes you that you're like, hey, how would you handle this? Or what are your thoughts on this? We'd be happy to talk about it.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yep.
Or at least give you our opinions and point of view on it. But,
sure.
So, yeah. Guess that's all we got for today.
Yep. So, have a good week. We'll see you next Wednesday.
Tonight.
Well, yeah. We'll be on tonight. Yeah, that's the other thing you can do. If you go to Artifacts Worldwide, you can check out our schedule. We're going back to the dark side tonight. We've got a Star Wars The Old Republic game that Mike and his wife Pam and myself are playing. And we're actually role-playing through the game. So you've got a couple Sith and a rather cranky bounty hunter.
Good mix.
Yep. So far, it's working pretty well.
Yep. Not bad.
So, and Sunday, we have Board Remotely, which is, let's see, is it this week is will be Pam and Nikki. Not sure what they're playing, but it's bound to be entertaining, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
That's Sunday afternoon, and then Monday night. We'll be hopefully rerunning this, so you'll have another chance to watch this. And then Tuesday nights at 7 Eastern U.S. time, that's Lands of Aecathan. That's sort of the big show.
Mm-hmm. So check it. Watch our past episodes on our YouTube channel and
on Twitch.
I guess, and on Twitch. Yep. So until next week.
See ya.
Bye.